Good afternoon, everyone. Today I want to share with you another tutorial. This tutorial I call it the ultimate guide for QooCam DNG8 mode. This is a bundle of explanations on QooCam. Because during my I post many panoramas on Facebook and some tutorials on YouTube, and many people ask me the basic concept. They don't get the idea of the DNG8, and I think the DNG8 mode is the shining point on these tiny little cameras on QooCam, which is seriously underestimated by most of the panoramic photographers in this world. So I make this tutorial for you. I want to give you a bundle explanations on the QooCam. So you can call it ultimate guide for the QooCam DNG8 mode. In fact, there's another name of the tutorial at first, because I made this tutorial right after the Express DNG8 update on the QooCam a few days ago. So this can also be a complete tutorial on QooCam for Express DNG8 mode. This is a new shooting mode for the VR photography, and I want to take you through the DNG8 mode, and I want to tell you where it really shines. Okay, this is our agenda for today's topic. First, this tutorial will not show you many photos, but we'll discuss the concept, and the comparison between different concepts in photography and in panoramic photography and in QooCam. So our agenda for today is first I want to explain some basic concept, and I want to tell you what on earth is DNG8, and the Express DNG8 with its secret capabilities in VR photography, and that is something new. I think that is something new in VR photography. And after the explanations on DNG8 and the Express DNG8, we can see there is now a reinforced workflow on VR photography. And last but not least, we'll give you some summary and prediction for the future. First, let's talk about some basic concept. It's like playing game. We have level 1, level 2. The level 1 is some basic concepts. It's like, I think it is always important to understand the right concept from the beginning. So you will start right, and you will get a deeper understanding of everything about the camera. So the first, I want to share with you some QooCam concept, or maybe the photography concept. They are the burst mode, average stacking, Raw plus, DNG8, Express DNG8, which was formerly called Smart DNG8, but that's okay. And also, there are two absent features in QooCam, which are the HDR and the automatic exposure bracketing. From the moment of today, we don't have HDR and AEB built in camera, but hope we will get it soon later. But never mind, because many people have problems on these concepts. So let's look at them one by one. The first one is average stacking. And average stacking, it is a concept from the image stacking, from the computer vision or the image in post-processing. It is an average algorithm. So the average stacking is, in fact, an algorithm over frames. The average over frames. And after the average stacking, you will have reduced the noise. And the result is you will get a smooth frame. You will get rid of the noise. And after average stacking, you can get the running water, smoke clouds, or the light trails, just like a long exposure effect. So average stacking is in fact an algorithm. And technically speaking, for the average stacking, there are dozens of different algorithms to help you achieve the average stacking result. So we will not go into that deep, but I want to tell you is that the average stacking is an photo or image algorithm over frames, and reduce the noise and smooth the frame. And the Raw plus, for some of you who attend my tutorial 2 months ago, I have long tutorial on the DNG8 and Raw+. So the Raw+, in fact, when we talk about Raw+, the Raw+ is a software. It is a smart photo stacking software with some good features like the ghosting and no blur, and the reference image alignment, right? So the Raw+, in fact, this is a software. Okay, the DNG8. The DNG8, this is not a very familiar name for most of the photographers, and even for me. It takes quite a lot of time to understand what on earth is DNG8. But if you are very familiar with the Sony RX100 Mark VII, they just released a few days ago, there is another shooting mode called single burst. So DNG8 is just like the single burst in RX100 Mark VII. And the DNG8 is a shooting mode that equipped on the Kandao cameras. So the DNG8 is not just on QooCam, but also on Obsidian cameras. So the DNG8, the only Kandao cameras call it DNG8, a shooting mode that equipped on the Kandao cameras. And what you will get from the DNG8 is 8 DNG files with a single click. So it's just like a single burst on the RX100 Mark VII. To give you more detail about the single burst, it's like this. You can see that this in the RX100 Mark VII, you will have a 90 FPS speed, and you will get 7 photos with a single press on the shutter. And on the QooCam, you will get 8 DNG files with a single click on the shutter button on your mobile phone. So it's just almost the same. And between each frames, the exposure settings will be locked. And then in the RX100, you can see that the focus and exposure are fixed at the first shot and when driving mode. So it's almost the same. But for the Sony RX100, you will only get 7 shots. But on QooCam, you will have 8 shots. It's almost the same. Okay, and yes, there's something that is very may feel weird. What is the difference between the burst or the DNG8? A burst mode. The burst mode is quite different from the DNG8. So in burst mode, burst is a shooting mode on the cameras. So in burst mode, the several frames are captured in a quick succession just by pressing the shutter button or holding it down. For some micro four thirds of some APS-C cameras, if you're holding the shutter button down, and the camera will shoot burst, which means take shots, a quick succession. A quick succession means one by one, but the DNG8 will take 8 in a very quick time. And in the DNG8, this exposure time was connected, but in a normal burst, they got separated. After each photo, you will have exposure, caching, and saving, right? If you attend my tutorial on the DNG8 Raw+, you must be familiar with this chart. And for the HDR is an absent feature on QooCam, but you can perform HDR post-processing on the PC or Mac. It depends on you how to use the camera. The HDR is a high dynamic range image, right? High dynamic range. It's kind of like a technology in the photography. It's not a shooting mode. In fact, it is a very big concept. The HDR image can represent a greater range of luminance levels than a normal single shot. The HDR shooting mode is absent on QooCam, but the concept has been discussed quite a lot of time in the QooCam user group. So the HDR image normally cannot be represented in the display because on the display on the screen, there are also a low dynamic range. So to show the HDR image to our audience, we have to use tone mapping. to convert the HDR image into a LDR image, we can show you on the display. So the HDR content can only be viewed on the HDR supported display. Oh, it's quite complicated. Just get rid of that. Next concept is the AEB. AEB stands for the automatic exposure bracketing. This is a shooting mode. On many cameras, we have AEB mode, auto automatic exposure bracketing mode, which means you can quickly take multiple shots at different exposures without manually change settings. Which means the AEB is another mode of shooting in burst, but during the burst shot, you can change to different exposures without manually set. The camera will take care for you. -2, 0, +2, or whatever you want. You can set the exposure step. There are many advanced mode of automatic exposure bracketing, but this shooting mode is absent on QooCam at this moment. Okay, level 2. Level 2 will be more difficult because we have to make comparison between the concept. You not only you have to understand the right concept, but you have to figure out what is the difference between the concept in order to make a better understand on VR photography, or you can take the full advantage of the cameras in your hand. So level 2 is the comparison between the different concepts. The way we make comparison between the first one is what is difference? What is the difference between the DNG8 and the burst mode? Yes, we have mentioned before. The second one is what is the relationship between the DNG8 and Raw Plus? Yeah, that is a good question, right? The third question is that the difference between the Raw Plus and HDR, right? And many people will ask, what is the difference between the Raw Plus and HDR? And what is the difference between the Raw Plus and the average stacking? Because the Raw Plus we also perform the photo stacking algorithm on a succession of DNG shots. What is the difference between the Raw Plus and average stacking? And why the QooCam update with Express DNG8? Because we already have DNG8. Why we update with Express DNG8? And what is wrong with the DNG8 with Raw Plus, right? That's different concept. The question number 1, the difference between the DNG8 and the burst mode. This is my personal answer to this question. I think you can take for a reference. So, for the DNG8 mode, the pipeline mechanism is a shining point. As we have explained before, in the DNG8 mode, the 8 shot was not taken one by one, but with a pipeline mechanism, it's redesigned a workflow. It's in the backstage, and there's almost no gap between frames. In the RX 100, the gap is a 90th second, but in the QooCam DNG8, between frames, there's only a 30-second gap time. So which means you can think that the DNG8 will take 8 shots with a shooting speed of 30 fps. That's a quick shot. And you will get the result of DNG8 mode. You will get 8 pure DNG files without JPEG files. I'm telling you pure JPEG file because even the DNG file we already have a preview version of the JPEG. But in the DNG8 mode, the DNG shot will come without any preview JPEG files. All the other information is unnecessary for photographers to do the photo stacking. So these 8 DNG shots were designed to be photo stack and improve the imaging quality. And there is even no preview JPEG because you can save time. You can shoot quicker, right? That's very important. While for the burst mode in most cameras, the photos are usually taken one after another, one by one. It's very slow, right? It's quite slow. And it's very slow. Even if some cameras have a 10 fps burst or 20 fps burst, it's still very slow. DNG8 theoretically you can get 30 or more DNG shots with one click on the shutter button. but for the DNG8, currently you can only get 8 shots. 8 shots in 30 FPS. That is DNG8 mode. But for the burst mode, the photos are usually taken one by one. That's way too slow. And usually you can sometimes for the GoPro cameras and some other cameras, you can get a high frame shot only with JPEG. And for some the high-end professional cameras, you can choose RAW plus JPEG and with 10 frame per second burst. But in that raw data, you also have embedded preview JPEG, or even with these 3 different preview JPEG files in different resolutions. So that RAW plus JPEG burst is way too slow compared with the DNG8. So we can see that the DNG8 is kind of like advanced or super high speed burst compared with the traditional burst mode. So I hope you can understand the difference between the DNG8 and burst mode. So the DNG8 is almost the same, but much better than the burst mode on the imaging quality compared with the imaging quality, because the sequence of 8 DNG shots will be used to do image stacking on RAW Plus to improve the imaging quality, reduce the noise, get higher imaging quality compared with the burst shot. And by selecting one of the frame as a reference image, you can also catch that beautiful moment in high speed, right? And the second one is, what is the relationship between the DNG8 and RAW Plus? Okay, the DNG8 is just a shooting mode, while the RAW Plus is a stacking software. It's a stacking tool. The shooting in DNG8 mode will give you the best possible input sequence for the RAW Plus. We have talked this before. The DNG8 works harmoniously with RAW Plus to get the best possible the raw data. Thus, the DNG8 together with RAW Plus will produce the best possible imaging quality in photography post-production. So DNG8 with RAW Plus will give you the best starting point in the post-processing workflow. Yes, and that's a relationship between the DNG8 and RAW Plus, which means that the RAW Plus could only have the best possible result on the basis of DNG8 mode shot. Or you can see there's the DNG16, DNG100, or DNG Infinity, as long as it's shooting DNG files in a DNG8 way. And that the sequence of raw data will have a very good input for the RAW Plus. So step 1 is DNG8, step 2 is RAW Plus. Combined with the step 1, step 2, you will get high imaging quality. And that is the best starting point in your photography post-production workflow. Yes, the third question is I think the most frequent asked question on many the QooCam users. What is the difference between the RAW Plus and the HDR? That is a very good question, and to explain this question, I have to show you with many flowcharts. Let's talk about it in simple. The RAW Plus and the HDR is the RAW Plus is software, and HDR is kind of a technology. That's a bonus technology, and the RAW Plus and HDR are different, but have something in common. By stacking the RAW Plus, the image will have a better signal-to-noise ratio. Thus, the effective number of lower bits in the DNG file increases, which means that the dynamic range of the dark shadow improves a lot, while the highlight part remains the same. So the RAW Plus is kind of like the HDR, but it only extends the dark shadow part. With the proper exposure to the highlight, you will extend the full HDR. To exposure for the highlight and the image stacking in RAW Plus, you will get the best dynamic range in your shots. That's different from the traditional HDR auto exposure bracket shooting, right? Next, I will give you some graphical illustration on this concept. The first one is that normally for the QooCam or some other cameras, let's take a assumption, make assumption that this camera can take 12 EV dynamic range, which is a perfect camera without any noise. Without any noise, it's the perfect camera. But in fact, for 12-bit, 12 EV cameras, when we are using in real life, we usually have a 10 EV or less, because we are capturing with noise, which will means the lower bits of the analog to digital information will have noise on the lower bits, right? Because the signal to noise ratio will be lower than the perfect situation. So the effective dynamic range for the camera is normally narrower than the theoretical value. So in theory, we have 12 EV dynamic range, but in fact, we can have 10 EV, 10 EV in real time. This is the natural environment from the dark to the bright. And after the perfect DNG stacking, normally we have 16-bit files, which means we might have 16-bit EV dynamic range by making the DNG stacking. And be careful is that the highlight limit doesn't change, because we are reducing the noise. Thus, we can recover more information from the noise, but we cannot get more detail from the highlight, which means you can extend the dynamic range from this point to this point. That's extend the dynamic range theoretically, right? But in fact, you won't get that wider dynamic range. In fact, we have some noise from the sensor, from the hardware, from all the environment, which means we can never get rid of all the noise from the sensor. So theoretically, we might have 16 EV dynamic range, but in fact, in the real life, we might have extend from 10 EV to 30 EV, right? Which means a lot better, right? It's a lot better than a single shot. So by shooting burst, the highlight limit doesn't change, but the dynamic range on the dark shadow extend by maybe 3 EV, but I've never make experiment, but I'm pretty confident about the result. The dynamic range you will have extra dynamic range in the dark shadow areas, and the stacking will not gain more highlight detail because they are overexposed. Every sensor is saturated, so we cannot recover more information from dark. But by removing the noise, we will reveal more detail, more information in the noise. Thus, we can get extra dynamic range in the dark. And if you expose for the highlight and extend the shadow range through Raw Plus and DNG8 shot, finally we'll have the best possible dynamic range for your photo. Yes, and that is. And the difference, for the HDR shooting, normally we will choose the auto exposure bracketing mode, which means that, for the 10 EV dynamic range, the same sensor, the same camera, the 0 EV, and we will shift to -2 EV and shift back to +2 EV. So that is a very traditional AEB shot, the -2, 0, +2. So altogether, we will have, from this point to this point. In total, we'll have a 14 EV dynamic range with automatic exposure bracketing shot. And that will help you not only extend the dark shadow dynamic range, but also the highlight range. So it will help you in the dark and bright. But the pipeline is way too slow. It's shooting in the traditional burst mode. It's shot one by one. And this is a single shot. It's a single shot. It's not the DNG8 mode. So maybe you have three individual DNG, which is -2, 0, and +2. Although you have a 40 eV dynamic range with automatic exposure bracketing, the pipeline is way too slow if it takes you a lot of time. The result will be noisy because for every single shot, you will have so much noise in the camera, and for the three different exposure values, the dark noise and some other related with exposure time and with temperature, this noise are totally different. One more thing is that it's very hard for you to make alignment in post-processing for three different individual exposures. That is a very difficult point in the HDR technology. And in the pipeline too slow, it's noisy, and you will get ghosting because the alignment is very hard for the computer, for the algorithms. These three shots, three completely different shots. So slow, noisy, and ghosting. That is the. So can we combine the automatic exposure bracketing and exposure 8 and the DNG8, which means we won't have a super fast pipeline and at the same time extend dynamic range with low noise without any ghosting. That's a very good result, and that is exactly what I was trying to shoot with QooCam with my in my workflow. The answer is yes. To do that, you have to the former slides. I explained to you the science behind the DNG8 and Raw Plus. And for the if you want to combine with the DNG8 and AEB, you can do like this. The first exposure for the shadow, which means you do this exposure, you will get a very good dynamic range. But at the same time, you might have lost some detail in the bright areas. And you can have a second exposure shot and manually tune the parameters exposure for the bright, which means you can recover a very good highlight range, but you can get a very good highlight range, but there are some you will lose the detail in the dark. And you combine these two shots, the two shots in HDR software, and you will get a much wider dynamic range compared with AEB and the almost no ghosting. Yes, and honestly speaking, for the DNG8, we already have the 13 EV dynamic range. The 13 EV dynamic range is really good enough for most of the consumer shooting situations like you and me. But if you want to extend to the further, you can shoot like this. The manually shooting in DNG8 mode twice with different settings. So somebody will want to ask, can we shoot more times? Technically speaking, it is okay, but shooting two shots, you can see in this situation we have 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 4. With 4 EV as a step, we already have a result that is good enough. So manually shoot DNG8 mode twice with different settings will give you the best possible result from these tiny little cameras. The next question, the difference between the Raw Plus and the average stacking. This is also a very good question. The Raw Plus and the average stacking are different, but they have something in common. The Raw Plus is not simply performing average stacking on image sequences, but also with a smart ghosting and the reference image alignment, and thus we reduce the noise dramatically without ghosting and blur. And Raw Plus will give you a better reference image in DNG, and it is robust for camera movement. And for the average stacking, you will only have a smoother result, but that is very sensitive to shaking. If you were shooting with handshake, the result will be messed up, right? So it's very easy to answer this question. So Raw Plus have something in common with the average stacking, but they have anti-ghosting and is robust for camera movement. So the Raw Plus will give you a better result in most situations compared with the simply averaging stacking. Fifth question is that why QooCam updated with Express DNG8? This answer is quite simple, but to tell you more about it, you have to know that at the moment the DNG8 files is invisible in the QooCam app, and although the DNG8 could give you a higher imaging quality, but this feature is not user-friendly. You cannot post-processing it on your mobile phone. You have to use a PC or Mac, which means if you want to work DNG8 with Raw Plus, you need to switch platforms from mobile to the PC or Mac. That is a way too complicated for most users, and you cannot share high-quality content with social network instantly, right? You have to post-processing after a long workflow, sharing stunning content with your friends. And QooCam at this moment is not capable of building embedded Raw Plus in the camera hardware, but it is possible to make Express DNG8 possible. And Express DNG8 leaves users an alternative substitution of image stacking inside the camera. You know, to make in-camera Raw Plus, it's kind of like impossible because there's so much computational work in embedded software. It's almost impossible on QooCam. But for the Express DNG8, this is just average stacking. You know, the average stacking is simply performing average stacking on the raw data, and that is way less computational work on the hardware. So we can have in-camera Express DNG8, and Express DNG8 is almost the same with the average stacking technology. But if you combine with the VR photography, I think Express DNG8 provide you more possibilities in the creation in VR photography. That's why I called the DNG8 Express DNG8 another miracle in the VR photography. And let's talk about what is wrong with DNG8 and Raw Plus. This is a very good feature on QooCam, but it's very hard to master. What is wrong with DNG8 Raw Plus? Yes, honestly speaking, the DNG8 and Raw Plus will help you create stunning content, but the workflow, the process you will have is complicated and sometimes it's boring, and it's not that easy to learn and master. Not everybody can learn it in 1 or 2 days. You have to try and try back and forth, and you have to have lots of post-processing skills in order to awake all the potential inside the high quality content. Okay, let's go to the next topic. What is the Express DNG8? Right? Express DNG8 is the normal DNG8 shots with in-camera average stacking in raw format. You will get the raw data after the average stacking. So it's not just like average stacking on JPEG. It's in raw. It's in raw. It's in DNG, the DNG average stacking. And the result you will have is a DNG plus a JPEG. And the JPEG is converted from the high quality DNG in the camera. So the Express DNG8 is a step further on a normal DNG8 shot. And now you can share high quality panorama in JPEG format in real time, as long as you can keep your QooCam very stable. And shooting Express DNG8, they copy the JPEG file in the app and share with your friends. And that's it. The point is that you have to keep your camera stable because the Express DNG8 is only performs the average stacking. So it's very sensitive to camera movement and hand shaking. Next topic is Express DNG8 and its secret capabilities. The secret is inside in-camera average stacking. So the Express DNG8 is average stacking, but the stacking process is complete in camera. So in camera every second will unleash a huge potential in VR photography. And for the other camera manufacturers like Ricoh, for the Ricoh Z1 and the Ricoh GR3 camera, they are very good cameras. They have a very special mode called composite mode. The Express DNG8 mode could also be doubled as the composite mode on QooCam, with composite long exposure time, composite water, composite cloud, composite light trails. So with the Express DNG8, it is very suitable of taking the running water, taking the smoke, clouds, and the light trails. And the point is you have to keep your camera very stable. And Express DNG8 mode provides something new in the VR photography, which means we have with Express DNG8 mode, which means we have in-camera composite long exposure shot. The longest exposure time will be 8 seconds, right? Because the longest time for the DNG8 is 1 second. The multiply by 8, we have 8 composite long exposure shot. Sometimes we have in-camera adjustable ND filter because in some other areas we can composite longer exposure, but without overexposure, right? So which means we have an equivalent adjustable ND filter inside the camera digitally, and this is in-camera image stacking inside the camera. That is a very good technology for the photographers. And after the Express DNG8, I can show you the reinforced workflow, the simplified workflow of what I have already mastered. So before Express DNG8, and in my talk, I have shown you that you have to shoot in DNG8 on the photosecond RAW Plus, switch platform, fine-tuning the raw data, stitching, tuning, and the post. But after we have Express DNG8, now the workflow is simplified a lot. It's just like the shooting in Express DNG8, stitching app, and share instantly with your friends. It's a simple and high quality, and which means the mobile DNG workflow is possible. And if you want to know more about the mobile DNG workflow on QooCam, you can refer to this link. I have already put it on YouTube. Okay, last but not least, let's make some summary and prediction for the future. Today we have, in this tutorial, in this talk, we have talked about some basic concept in the VR photography and behind the QooCam camera. And we also make the comparison between the different concepts. We are not comparing different cameras, but we are making comparison between different concepts. That's very interesting, right? And the Express DNG8 and its secret capabilities for the VR photography. And after that, last but not least, I have shown you the simplified workflow after we have the Express DNG8. Our topic focused on Express DNG8 for most of the time. But for the concept part, I think you must have learned a lot from the concept and their comparisons. For the future, I hope for the QooCam, or maybe we have a new version of QooCam. Maybe I hope so. I hope we can have a high quality mobile DNG workflow on QooCam. I have already figured out how to perform the mobile DNG workflow on QooCam. You can refer to this link. But also, I want that we can copy the DNG from the app directly from the camera to the mobile platform. Next is maybe we can have the in-camera RAW Plus in real time in the future, in more advanced, the new model of the camera in the future. I hope so, but I don't know if we can have the great camera in the future, but I hope so. And also in-camera double DNG8 bracketing to extend, to combine with the auto exposure bracketing and the DNG8. But it's much harder than the DNG8 and RAW Plus, and it's even harder than in-camera RAW Plus told maybe it's impossible. It's impossible. It takes a lot of time for the engineers to craft this functionality inside the camera. And also, I want the in-camera double DNG8 bracketing with exposure fusion and tone mapping, which means we can get a high-quality HDR image straight out from the camera. That is the ultimate goal for most of our friends, because by doing like this, we can get rid of the ghost, get rid of the motion blur, but at the same time with the perfect tone mapped HDR image in camera and share with friends instantly, right? Okay, that's all for today's talk. This tutorial, the talk is quite different from we have before because we have talked a lot, a lot, a lot of concept and make some comparisons between the concept. But I will share the slides with you so you can check it out. Whenever you feel like that you want to know more about this camera, more about the technology. And thanks for your time. And see you in the future for more tutorials. So bye.